Unexpectedly, the mission on floor 15 was to find a person to protect in a vast crowd. There were two reasons for Team 3's demise. One was that they treated the mission as needing to kill all the humans here, and the other was that the person they were supposed to protect was killed. Loki said they needed to find the person to protect quickly because he might be close to death. However, finding one person in a vast crowd is a huge challenge. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. Loki wanted to know if anyone was familiar with this place, and Aaron confirmed that he was, having visited here as a merchant. This place is called Adilf, a city well known for its thriving trade. Are there any notable places in this city? Aaron explained that there is a temple in the city center that worships a statue of the goddess, one of the holy sites of the order, known as the Silver Hall, one of the few temples on the continent. And these people are all heading to that temple, probably because something important is happening there. Thus, they decided to head to the temple and asked Adis to scout and keep watch. Adis swiftly leapt onto a rooftop, overseeing the entire city. Meanwhile, Loki led the group to the entrance of the temple. Just as the soldiers were about to speak up to stop them, Loki quickly knocked one unconscious and pinned another against the wall. Loki did this because these soldiers could see them, meaning they would be enemies. Unlike the NPC soldiers on floor 10, these soldiers can see their presence. To be cautious, Loki dealt with them. Afterward, the group followed the throng into the Silver Hall. At the same time, an elderly man slowly emerged on the floor above, and a voice magnified by magic signaled for everyone to quiet down. Is that magnification magic? While Ivalka was quite surprised by this, Loki urged everyone to quickly enter the hall, as their time was running out. Since such a major event was happening on this floor, it meant that their protectee was likely a key figure in this incident. The soldiers, thinking they were heretics, obstructed them in every way. Loki slowly drew his sword from behind and then kicked the goddess statue, shattering it on the spot. This is what you call a heretic. Hearing this, the soldiers immediately attacked. Next, they would eliminate all enemies, as they believed the person they needed to protect was inside the hall. Loki led Aaron in the initial attack, blocking with his shield and then killing with a sword. Another attack came. Loki dodged to the side and struck with his sword. At the same time, Loki teleported in front of an enemy, using his shield to knock them back. Facing the enemy's encirclement, Loki reminded everyone they must make quick work of this, as they had only a few minutes left. Just now, Loki kicked open the doors of the hall. If they couldn't find the protectee within the effective time, they would all die here. And again a mission prompt appeared. Floor 15 mission, protect a certain individual. Meanwhile, Loki quickly signaled Ivalka to use telekinesis. In the next second, all tables and chairs were blocking the door. Although the man nearby looked very panicked, Loki didn't notice any changes in the window, so he ruled that out. Next, the corridor was their next destination. Afterward, many soldiers attacked Loki and the others, and Loki signaled everyone to follow him. After clearing this area, he decided to head to that corridor first. The scene shifts. If that elder is not the protectee, then the successor of the sun he mentioned must be the target of this mission. Meanwhile, soldiers in the corridor were earnestly introducing themselves, but Loki ignored them, as he was focused only on completing the mission quickly. After searching multiple rooms, Loki realized none were his protectee. As time rapidly drained away, he finally focused on the last room. Accompanied by Loki bursting the door open, a garden suddenly appeared before him. He noticed a figure behind the large door. At that moment, numerous soldiers had already reached him. At this moment, the elderly man with white hair was urging His Highness. The citizens were waiting for her in the square, yet she was very concerned about the noises in the garden. There was no need to worry, as he would handle this. Meanwhile, Loki was embroiled in a fierce battle, but he quickly realized these soldiers were different from those downstairs. After a brief fight, Loki seized the moment to swing his sword, instantly killing an enemy. Another attack came. Loki lifted his sword to block, then threw his shield, stopping another enemy's assault. The next second, Loki thrust his sword, knocking down the enemy in front of him. He then engaged in a fierce duel with the last enemy, surprisingly finding their strengths evenly matched. Loki delivered a powerful strike, swinging his dual swords at the enemy. Just as his long sword broke, Loki seized the opportunity to attack again, finally killing him. Meanwhile, Her Highness was delivering a speech watched by all. The next second, Loki slowly walked out of the room, the old man looking shocked. Had he already broken through the soldiers? The old man began to slowly gather magical power, but Loki incredulously discovered that the old man's target was her, the frail girl before him. Even the man hadn't anticipated that the self-proclaimed elder's target would be her. At the same time, Loki abruptly attacked the elder, and in an instant, the enemy's head fell to the ground, but his magic did not cease. The next second, a spell pierced directly through the building opposite, causing a collapse that made everyone flee the room. Although the man was curious why the elder hadn't tried to stop him, it seemed she must be the one they needed to protect. Just as Loki was about to explain to her, the next second, he sensed something was amiss and quickly pushed her down, blocking an arrow shot at her with his sword. At this moment, she looked perplexed as the enemies had already positioned themselves in front of them, immediately launching an attack. Meanwhile, 3 knives hurled towards the girl. Just in the nick of time, Loki teleported to block the attack, quickly noticing the knives were coated in poison. At this moment, the enemy had reached the girl, but the next second, an arrow struck and killed him. It was shot by Adis. After a tough fight, Loki finally cleared all the enemies before him. By then, Adis had also arrived, but she was curious about who this little one was. Just as the girl was trying to shoo them away, an arrow flew at her, startling her out of her wits. Loki then offered her a deal. If you want to live, you must come with us, or would you rather die here? So, what's your answer? After a moment of thought, the girl chose to trust Loki. Meanwhile, a mission completion prompt came from the front. Special NPC Friasis Al Lagner joins the team. Mission change. Escape the city with Friasis Al Lagner. Loki had anticipated that they wouldn't just easily complete the mission. Loki slowly picked up a crossbow. Adis, get ready to descend. I'll hold them off. At that moment, Jenna and the others also rushed over, reporting that a large number of soldiers were pouring in. Loki told everyone that this girl was the one they needed to protect. Right now, the most important thing was to descend using the rope and then find a suitable escape route. Meanwhile, Adis voiced her opinion. She pointed out that the left side had the fewest soldiers and the path was incredibly complex, making it the best escape route. Loki then decided to take the left as the optimal escape route and instructed everyone Ivalka would create a firewall to stop the enemy's advance. Then Eren and Adis would go down first. Accompanied by a burst of flames, Adis and Eren first descended along the rope, followed by Loki and the girl. After a moment's glide, the two landed safely on the ground. Meanwhile, Eren was desperately trying to block the enemy's attack, but the next second, a dagger pierced straight through his abdomen. A prompt appeared. Eren has entered a poisoned state, and his HP will continue to drop for a period. Hearing this, Loki immediately froze. Then he asked Eren about his condition. I'll be okay. Just now, a poisoned blade had pierced Eren's abdomen. Meanwhile, Jenna had also reached the ground via the rope. At this moment, Loki was shouting for everyone to escape to the left, while the enemy pursued relentlessly, vowing to capture the witch and the heretics. Which? Are they talking about me? The next second, the enemy suddenly appeared before them, but was instantly killed by Loki and Adis on the spot. At that moment, more enemies were slowly approaching. Just when things were critical, Adis led everyone to quickly flee, indicating that if they moved in this direction, they could reach the outskirts. At the same time, Ivalka raised her hand to use telekinesis, and the next second, a huge rock blocked the enemy's path. The scene shifts, and at the moment, everyone was taking a brief rest. Loki planned to stay here for only about 5 minutes because the rock wouldn't hold the enemies off for long. If they were surrounded, the situation would worsen. Loki thought that if Ivalka's magic could charge to the third stage, they would somehow complete the mission. Loki inquired about Eren's wound, but the outlook was not optimistic. Even Loki admitted he was helpless because the poison couldn't be cured with a healing potion. At that moment, Eren's life was ticking away. Isn't there any other way? Do you have healing abilities? Because some NPCs have special abilities. If she had healing abilities, Eren could be saved, but she said she didn't have any special abilities. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. Loki knew well that the poisoned state could not be cured with an HP potion. Eren had about 10 minutes of normal activity left, but it seemed Eren had already made his decision, because he was well aware that Loki had made it clear that if they couldn't keep up, they would be left behind, and he felt this was the time. From the beginning, Loki had made it clear that those who were not useful would be discarded. Faced with a dying Eren, what choice would he make? Although Jenna offered to fight alongside Eren, he refused, knowing he had no special talents and now poison, he was even less useful. Loki asked Ivalka for her opinion, but she said it was up to Loki to decide. Considering efficiency, leaving Eren here was the most rational decision. After all, protecting the target while also looking after Eren was a burden to the current team. After a moment's thought, Loki drank half a bottle of healing potion and then threw it to Eren, signaling him to drink it. Although the healing potion wouldn't be very effective, it could at least prevent Eren's condition from worsening. Loki even had everyone pull out their remaining potions and give them to Eren, instructing him to drink one every 10 minutes. Although this was an extreme waste, it was Loki's decision. Next, Loki divided everyone into two teams. He and Adis were responsible for escorting the target out of there, while Jenna and Ivalka were responsible for protecting Eren until the mission was completed. Since the enemy was targeting their protectee, Jenna just needed to run in the opposite direction to find a relatively safe place. But if they did that, escaping would be difficult. However, Loki said not to worry, as he planned to blend into the city's crowd and then escape. Although splitting the team would lead to insufficient combat power, thus unable to forcefully break through, it also had clear advantages. Loki and the others could quietly evade the enemy's search. Considering Ivalka's wide-ranging magic and Jenna's versatile talents, Loki trusted they could better protect Eren. Loki signaled the two to take Eren and run outside the city until they completed the mission. Of course, if the situation became extremely urgent, they must decisively leave Eren behind. After all, compared to protecting an injured person, they should prioritize their own lives. Afterward, the two teams began their respective missions. Through conversation with Adis, it was learned that the area's routes were complex and buildings could be freely entered. It seems the rules here are completely different from those on floor 5. Moments later, they arrived at a water alley. Just then, a vagrant was about to approach them, but the next second, Adis knocked him to the ground. She then explained that while hiding in the slums was a good option. The area was labyrinthine, so they still needed to be vigilant. She then began to look for suitable hiding places. Meanwhile, a prompt came from ahead. Even if the network is shut down, heroes will continue to act. It seems the player is starting to get bored. But on the other hand, although she seemed very nervous, she kept her cool. If it had been anyone else, they would have refused Loki's proposal to escape together, but she chose to trust him without hesitation. The scene shifts, and Loki and the others found a building where they would stay until nightfall. At this moment, Phreasis finally breathed a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Adis said she needed to go out again, leaving Loki in charge here because she was going to look for other escape routes. Moments later, only 2 people were left in the room, but Loki felt very awkward because he was not good at communicating with others. Perhaps this task would have been better suited for Jenna. Just then, Phreasis began to converse with Loki. She revealed that she was the second successor to the Imperial throne and was curious about where Loki came from, but Loki replied that it was indescribable because no one would believe it even if he explained. Are you the heroes who saved Nelsa? Nelsa was the name of the city on floor 10, and Loki had heard NPCs mention this name. It seems everything was as she had seen in her dream. In Phreasis' dream, warriors were fighting to protect the city. Although she couldn't see their faces clearly, she was sure those people were Loki and his companions. Survivors from Nelsa had said that someone had protected the city. Without them, the city would have ceased to exist long ago. A year ago, Phreasis had a strange dream where everything disappeared. Every empire, the 4 great family cities, and all cities and villages, big or small, all were burned to ash. She was convinced that the continent would eventually head towards destruction. And now, strange things were happening across the continent, with monsters wantonly destroying places where humans lived. Loki was curious why she was telling him all this. Phreasis expressed that she needed power, the power to save the world, and for that, she needed Loki's help. But Loki found it laughable because, as a princess, she could find more suitable candidates than him. She then explained her situation. She was merely a figurehead with no real power. No one believed her, nor did anyone choose to follow her. Whenever she mentioned her dreams, people would shun her, except Loki didn't do that. That's why she sought Loki's help. Loki thought to himself that things were becoming complicated. If what she said was true, then everything happening now was 10 years past. Even if Loki wanted to help her, it would be futile because she was just an NPC who would disappear once the mission was completed. There was a reason he couldn't help Phreasis. Perhaps after hearing all this, she might even mock Loki, as they weren't from the same world. Once the mission was completed, they would be transported back to their original world. So even if Loki wanted to help the princess, it wouldn't make a difference. Upon hearing this, the princess looked incredulous. We are here just to complete a mission. In this world, we are given various tasks, and if we fail to complete them, we face death. And this time, our mission is to protect you, Phreasis. Although she was skeptical of Loki's explanation, she eventually chose to believe him. After all, Loki had never doubted her. She then said that now they just needed to perform their respective tasks, and she wouldn't try to change Loki's mind anymore. Loki was curious about what kind of mission a princess like her had. She responded that her task was to prevent the dream from becoming reality. But those people in the square, did you call them here? The princess affirmed this, as she needed to give a speech to gain more influence. After all, she was still far behind her brother. Loki fell into deep thought. If he and the others hadn't arrived on time, she would probably already be lying in a pool of blood by now. If the mission presented in Pick Me Up made any sense, it was to save a valuable NPC. Loki told her his name was Han. She expressed gratitude for Han's help. However, Loki was still curious why those people targeted her, but even the princess couldn't understand this. Loki tossed a piece of clothing to her. Does this mean I should change into this outfit? So, she accepted Loki's suggestion. In the corridor, Loki noticed that she was secretly crying. Although she was a princess, she looked to be only about 15 years old at most. Perhaps she was still struggling to accept her current situation. Moments later, the princess changed clothes, and Loki casually tossed the previous clothes into a box. He then informed the princess that the escape plan would be executed in 3 hours, and before that, she could rest a little longer. If something happened to Aaron, he would receive a prompt in time. It looked like they could hold on a bit longer. She might be a princess, but nobody around her believed what she said because she had a strange dream in which the entire continent was heading towards destruction. Before this, Loki had decided they would escape tonight. Moments later, Adis hurried back, having found the city's exit, but 22 knights were guarding it. Just the 2 of them could not handle it. Searching for another exit would only waste more time. According to the mission requirements, as long as the princess walked out of the city gate, the mission would be considered complete. However, there was a level 21 knight at the exit, and if they clashed head-on, the chances of them walking out alive were very low. Loki then instructed Adis, go back to the place we were before, get the princess's clothes, find Jenna, and have her put them on. You mean, we need Jenna as a decoy? Based on the information Adis brought back, if they had enough time, they could definitely find another exit. But considering Aaron might not last much longer, and if Jenna disguised as the princess, it could surely draw a lot of the forces away from here. After receiving her instructions, Adis hurried off. Loki then signaled to the princess, when you hear the signal later, later. Just run towards the outside of the city. Even if you are injured, you want me to do this? Of course, even if I die, you must do this. Then it seems this will be our last meeting. Perhaps. Loki began to take action. Meanwhile, Aaron's time was running out, and Jenna was anxiously waiting. At the same time, Adis had also found the princess's clothes. Next, they must escape here before dawn ends. Loki was hiding nearby, observing the enemy situation. He had Jenna impersonate the princess because their builds were similar and, in the dark environment, it was difficult for the enemy to differentiate. Just then, a prompt about Aaron's worsening poison condition appeared. His life was hanging by a thread. Loki then initiated his plan. If Jenna, impersonating the princess, was discovered by the enemy, they would swarm in, putting everyone in grave danger. While attracting the enemy's attention and protecting Aaron was challenging, they had no choice but to take the risk now. If Loki couldn't complete the mission quickly, they would all perish there. At that moment, Loki awakened a skill. Loki learned the stealth skill. On the other side, Aaron's time was running out, and Ivalka looked bewildered, while Jenna appeared very anxious. Just then, Adis hurried back and informed everyone of Loki's plan. Meanwhile, Loki was surprised to find himself acquiring the stealth skill, which could come in handy right now. He was secretly observing the enemy. There were 22 enemies in total, and although he didn't know how many Jenna could draw away, he had to be ready to fight them all. Next, he just needed to wait for the signal. At that moment, a tornado of fire erupted, instantly lighting up the entire city. They had found their target, and the leader ordered an immediate advance. As the soldiers hurried off, only 4 enemies remained here. However, these foes did not look easy to handle, but the situation was somewhat improved compared to before. The next second, Loki launched a sudden attack. The guards hadn't reacted yet when Loki killed them on the spot, and even a soldier drawing his sword was swiftly cut down by him. Then, he threw a dagger, instantly piercing another enemy. In less than 4 seconds, Loki had achieved a triple kill. Only you left now. The long-haired soldier slowly drew the greatsword from his back, and Loki knew that his current strength was not enough to penetrate the armor. He had to aim for the gaps. The next second, Loki fiercely attacked him, knowing he didn't have time to waste. Loki intended to finish it with one move, but the opponent blocked it instantly. They then engaged in an intense attack and defense battle. During the fight, Loki sensed something odd. This guy didn't attack at all. Although Loki tried to expose a flaw for him to attack, the opponent ignored it. Did he know that just by delaying, he could win? Meanwhile, Jenna entered a bleeding state, and Aaron was on the verge of death. It looked like they were running out of time. Loki then entered a berserk state, and the next second, he teleported in front of the enemy. Now with a strength value of 40, since he couldn't pierce the enemy's armor, he would use his strength to destroy it. A message came from ahead. Ivalka had entered a state of magical overload. Magical overload is an abnormal state that occurs when a mage uses magic excessively. Damn, there's no time left. Thus, Loki signaled the princess to flee immediately, regardless of what happened, and to run straight outside the city. Just then, the long-haired soldier noticed her and was about to strike with his sword, but Loki blocked it with a teleport. However, trouble followed one after another. An assassin threw a poison dagger at the princess, and just as the dagger was about to reach her, Loki dived in and intercepted it. Loki entered a poison state, and at that moment, Phreases appeared panicked. Don't stop, run. The team was about to be completely annihilated, and all the adverse situations in the world are due to the incompetence of those involved. The saying that those who can't keep up will be left behind has always been true. As Loki signaled the princess to flee, he was already poisoned. Meanwhile, the long-haired soldier launched a fierce attack on him. Loki barely managed to block with his sword, but the next second, he was slammed against the wall and spat out a large mouthful of blood. If not for the armor on his chest, his ribs would have probably been shattered. But the enemy wasn't faring well either, because in an instant, Loki had driven the poison dagger into the enemy's right eye. At that moment, Adis was in a bleeding state, and time was running short. Suddenly, a black-clad assassin fired a poison arrow at the princess. Loki quickly pushed an enemy aside, pulled out the poison knife embedded in him, and threw it, piercing the assassin on the spot. Just then, an enemy instantly appeared behind Loki, while Loki leaped into the air, ready to face the next attack. Loki dodged this deadly strike, then mustered all his strength and slammed hard into the enemy. The next second, the enemy was sent flying dozens of meters away. At the same time, Loki snatched the giant sword from the opponent's hand, teleported in front of the enemy, and with a shout, the enemy was slain on the spot. Afterwards, Loki, utterly exhausted, collapsed on the ground, now on the brink of death. This is bullshit. Not only did Aaron enter a critical state, but Jenna and Ivalka also fell into abnormal conditions, and even Loki was severely poisoned. This would be their last struggle to decide life and death. Looking at the princess who had safely run out of the city gates, Loki thought, it seems it's time to say goodbye. This mission has really been exhausting. Meanwhile, Adis was surrounded by enemies. Jenna was being relentlessly pursued. Ivalka had lost control, and Aaron was down to his last breath. However, as the princess made her escape, a blue light shimmered over everyone, indicating the princess had safely escaped the city, and subsequently, everyone was transported back to the rest area. Then, the summary information came through MVP Han. At that moment, you were the one who made me wear that weird outfit. It looks like you didn't like it. Of course not, because all the soldiers were chasing kidding me. But you're not dead yet, are you? At the same time, a completion record prompt appeared, allowing masters to share their experiences with other matsers. Everyone did well this time, completing the mission without any fatalities, especially Adis. Without her help, we probably would have died on floor 15. But Adis remarked that it was merely a minor effort. However, now she should return to her own team. She believed the master would soon bring new teammates for Loki. Without Adis's knowledge sharing and her help implementing those plans, they wouldn't have been able to clear floor 15, so the real MVP should be Adis. At that moment, Ivalka stated she needed to rest first, as the battle had drained too much of her energy. Don't take it too hard. You were just unlucky. Eren stopped Loki to apologize for holding them back. Don't let it happen again, because I can't save you a second time. Can you ensure it won't happen again? Are you planning to take me to the end of the tower? He thought it was impossible because the gap between him and people like Loki was growing rapidly. No matter how hard Eren tried, he couldn't keep up with Ivalka, Jenna, or Loki. Dejected, Eren returned to the city, and only Loki knew he was right. If Eren hadn't been injured, they wouldn't have taken such a risk. It was Loki's decision to save Eren that led everyone into danger. Although Eren's level was the same as Loki's and others, the attributes they gained were fundamentally different. When Loki and Jenna leveled up, they could gain 5 to 6 points in attributes, but Eren gained none. Speaking of skills, the situation was even worse. Eren had too few skills and low proficiency. While he possessed decent combat abilities, he was not good at utilizing them. Although he could still cooperate with the team for a while, this gap would only widen over time, and eventually, he would be excluded due to lack of ability. Continuing this way, Eren would sooner or later die on a mission. All adverse situations in the world are due to the incompetence of the individuals involved. Loki and the others would not have much more time with Eren because he lacked sufficient talent. Although Loki felt somewhat reluctant to part with Eren, he wasn't irrational enough to keep a useless person in the team. The saying that those who can't keep up will be left behind has always been true. Just after clearing floor 15, Ivalka was visibly excited because she could finally train freely. Despite having just been through a major battle, the masters would surely let them rest for at least 3 days. But both Jenna and Eren expressed the need to use this opportunity to train, and Loki shared their sentiment. The scene shifts, and Loki is currently doing a 10 kilograms weight training because his physical fitness had long surpassed human limits, and only by doing so could he expend any energy. He believed that this must be related to the interference power that Isol had mentioned. Since Loki handed over the strategy to the masters, the atmosphere in the waiting room had drastically changed. Initially, the one-star heroes would work hard to survive, but gradually, they became lazy because they no longer worried about being caught by the masters for synthesis. In this world, everyone must demonstrate their value to survive, or else they will face a judgment known as synthesis. But now, they seemed idle, which was related to the neglected synthesis facility. At that moment, 2 members of the third team slowly approached Loki. After arriving here, the man heard an interesting story. It said that to survive here, one must show their value. Although risking their lives in battle is thrilling, what's the situation now? We fight recklessly, and to them, it seems only natural. Belkist, a 2-star hero, volunteered to join the training when he first arrived here. Not only does he have a strong will, but he also possesses outstanding talents, as does Nariza, who is nearby. But is this really okay? Do I need to train them myself? But Loki signaled him not to meddle. This is really terrible. However, he was skeptical about everything Loki said. In his view, demonstrating one's value here doesn't matter at all. Although he heard about something called synthesis that can clear away useless heroes, he had never seen the master use it. Loki then signaled him to just do his part. As for whether these were true, you'll know in time. Then I look forward to that day. They then turned and left, while Loki was left deep in thought. Not misusing synthesis has been Loki's method since he started interacting with Pick Me Up. When he posted this approach on the forums, many masters began to imitate it, but all eventually failed. Fear is one of the strongest motivators. Without synthesis, heroes simply do not obey the master's commands, leading to lazy behavior and even refusal of orders, as the current situation shows. Have you been to the weekly dungeon recently? Why are you the only one carrying materials? Because no one is willing to work, and the situation here has changed drastically. Those who used to behave like this had only one path: death. It seems everything has become pleasant. Perhaps the masters already know everything that's happening here. Whether it's the weekly dungeons or the daily training, the efficiency of the heroes is continually declining. To solve this problem, there are only 2 methods. One is to carry out a lot of synthesis. In this scenario, many 2-star heroes would be sacrificed, but this action would improve the working efficiency of the heroes. Of course, if handled improperly, it could lead to even worse situations. The second method is to provide a motivational factor different from fear to stimulate the hero's motivation. Meanwhile, the master chose to invest in facility expansion research and upgraded it to level 1. Subsequently, a prompt came: facility customization functionality is now available. Masters can freely build facilities and change facility details. At that moment, Loki was watching the sky, thinking the real show was about to begin. Eren came over and asked Loki if he could accompany him for training. You've just finished training with Adis, but I don't think that's a big deal. Do you think you can get stronger with tireless training? training? Just then, Isol reminded everyone to meet at the square. The scene shifts, and Isol gestures for everyone to head to the warehouse. Although everyone is quite puzzled, a major project is about to begin. The next second, a tremor occurs, and the master upgrades the accommodation building and the training center. Jenna is very calm. After all, with more people now, it's necessary to increase the living space. But it would be nice if there was a bathhouse with hot water. Then, the master remodeled according to Jenna's request. What new thing will appear this time? Who knows? At the same time, a prompt came that the square had been upgraded to level 3. Loki thought, things are not as good as we imagined. What does this mean? You'll know in a moment. Just when Loki thought things were not that simple, Jenna comforted everyone not to worry because the master was building new facilities for them. Hearing this, everyone immediately fell into endless speculation. Isol signaled that it was okay to leave the warehouse. The next second, everyone was stunned by the scene before them. Countless skyscrapers came into view. The little master had completed the transformation of the entire waiting room, expanded the training center, increased the training efficiency of the heroes, and even opened bathhouse facilities and provided more delicious food. Everyone rushed towards the building, but the interior was empty. Even the previous furniture had all disappeared. Just as Jenna was puzzled by this, Loki signaled her to look up. There are stairs to the second floor, and the second floor has undergone a dramatic change. Not only is there high-end furniture, but the restaurant is also luxurious, and there's even a place to bathe. However, how to distribute it has now become a topic of argument among everyone. Isol quickly stopped them and signaled everyone to meet at the square, because the master had already given an answer to how to distribute. First, everyone in Team 1 can choose any room on the second floor, followed by Team 2, and then the most hardworking people in logistical work, and the rest can only live on the empty first floor. At the same time, Team 3 was slowly approaching everyone, curious about what had happened here. Jenna also felt very strange because only 13 people were arranged on the second floor. It seems that Team 3 was also arranged on the first floor. At this moment, everyone was very dissatisfied with this distribution. So far, everyone's growth and efforts have been different, but they all received the same reward. Without synthesis, if you want all heroes to be promoted, you must use the separation principle to create a class system. It's just like nobles and commoners, divided by the effort they put in. Although there is enough space in the high-end dormitory to accommodate everyone, only 13 people can use it, and the rest have to live on the empty floor 1. This is the class system created by the master, and it's the simplest way to motivate heroes besides synthesis. Most of the ingredients here are thanks to Jenna, even though she also put a lot of effort into the battle. But some guys didn't do anything. So compared to synthesis, this way of creating classes can better motivate heroes. The model just created is the A3 model Loki used in the early days in Niflheim. Although it has some flaws, it's the simplest way to reduce synthesis. Meanwhile, Isol could no longer tolerate it, and she punched the ground heavily. You guys were just synthesis material a month ago. Now you should be content to be alive. Hearing this, everyone immediately fell silent. The chefs have been arranged on the second floor. What are we supposed to eat? From now on, eating meat is forbidden on the first floor. You only have potatoes to choose from. Hearing this, a nearby uncle immediately felt extremely dissatisfied, even pulling out the long sword from behind his back, and suddenly attacked Isol. Just as Isol was about to deal with him, a chopping strike came down, and the next second, the uncle's right hand was chopped off. The next second, someone caught the severed hand. What are you doing? As long as he is still alive, it's fine, right? When he first arrived here, he learned from others that if you want to survive here, you must prove your worth and not break the rules, especially not to conflict with Team 1 and Team 2, because they are monstrous beings. He believes that if training could make them stronger, then he has a good chance to beat Eren. However, as for Loki's strength and the matter of synthesis, the uncle was completely unaware. After all, the master had stopped using synthesis before he arrived here. Eventually, he sorted out the information he obtained. Battle can promote a hero's growth. The more you train, the more skills you master. And the boss of this place is Loki. Returning to the present, although he knew the predecessors had suffered a lot, he believed proving one's worth was not really important. And while he heard about something called synthesis, he didn't understand why the master didn't use it. Then, he threw the severed hand back to the uncle. It will heal if you reattach it. So, does anyone else want to try? Just then, Loki questioned him why he acted on his own. I couldn't control myself and just acted. Loki knew well that if he hadn't stepped in, the uncle would have already died at Isol's hands. After learning that Team 3 would also only live on the first floor, Belkis dropped a tough line. Don't worry, they will be up there soon. Isol announced the conditions for going to the second floor, which was to become a hero like Loki. You must learn from him. If you want to survive, you must show your value in many ways, because the master is watching you all the time. When he thinks you have worked hard enough, then you will have earned your way to the second floor. However, people around were still complaining about the situation. This irritated Belkis so much that he was about to draw his sword, but he was deterred by a look from Loki. There's nothing to complain about. After all, we've been through much worse. Do you want us to fight like you did? After all, support roles aren't much needed right now, and among the many combat roles, only a very few can go to the second floor. The group was divided between those who accepted and those who didn't. The situation was worse than imagined, because because so many changes at once would inevitably provoke someone's resistance, just like now. At that time, a fat man claimed he already knew Loki's secret, which was how to change the master's mind. Then he called for everyone to revolt, causing many teams to enter an inoperable state. However, Loki calmly responded, "These people really don't recognize their own situation." Loki threw his longsword to the fat man, saying, "Cut off your own arm with that sword, and you may still have a chance to live. Of course, you can choose not to believe what I said, but you'll probably regret it." They thought Loki was just threatening them. After all, heroes indeed have the power to resist their master's commands, but their situation is completely different from Loki and others. Since they don't trust us, let them be. Just then, Isol stopped the two people behind the fat man and ordered them to go to the synthesizer. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Could this be the rumored synthesis? Things just got interesting, especially since synthesis hasn't been used for a long time, so it's time to kill the chicken to scare the monkey. With the synthesizer's closure, a prompt came that the master was conducting synthesis. "Nice to see you again, Alan, but this should be the last time." Following that, a blue light appeared, and Belkist upgraded, gaining a new skill. Then, he slowly walked out of the synthesizer, saying, "This feels really great." After the synthesis, Belkist appeared very excited, even hoping the master would use synthesis more often. However, Olivier and Walter began to argue because they had listened to the fat man's words, leading to this situation. Then in the synthesis chamber, they screamed as a blue light appeared. Nerissa was enhanced through synthesis. At that moment, the fat man gave up resistance, opened his control state himself, and then begged Loki and others for mercy, but it was futile. This outcome was inevitable, as the master wanted to show the other heroes. Although there are other safer ways to handle this issue, instilling fear in the heroes is still necessary. At the same time, a blonde man sought Loki's help because he heard Loki could communicate with the master. "If you are willing to cut off an arm, I will relay your message to the master. After all, I have said, this will be a lesson you will never forget." However, the fat man still thought Loki was harming him. Loki understood that if they were unwilling to cut off their own arms, they only had death to face. Although he couldn't easily help them, if they had the determination to cut off an arm, they deserved to live. But it seems not so simple for them, because cutting off an arm at least requires skills related to swordsmanship, otherwise they would have to saw it off brutally. In the end, the fat man did not cut off his arm, and next, he would have to be synthesized with Loki. Despite his extreme fear, he could not escape the fate of being synthesized. With the synthesizer slowly opening, the synthesis ended, and Loki's experience was increased. Now only 25 people remain, and the rest are still complaining about everything. Although Belkist wanted to step forward and teach them a lesson, he was stopped by Loki. After all, Loki had said before that he did not need to intervene in this matter. "It seems you care quite a bit about them. Until next time, it will be on the second floor of the dormitory." Meanwhile, as the master's summons continue, the class system among heroes is gradually revealed. Those without the capability will soon die, and only a very few can go to the second floor. Loki reminded everyone, "Don't think that being on the second floor means you can let your guard down, because you could be demoted at any time. And since there's a second floor, a third floor appearing is just a matter of time. The number of floors will continue to increase, which means the class divisions will become even clearer." The scene shifts, and unexpectedly, today's breakfast is exceptionally rich. Moreover, after the reconstruction, Loki can see most of the facilities clearly. Meanwhile, Loki slowly approaches Eren. "It seems you are very diligent in your training." The biggest change in the training facilities upgraded to level 3 is the introduction of personal training rooms and sparring areas. Personal training rooms allow for solo training, finally allowing Loki to freely practice his berserk skills. In the sparring area, the rapid recovery function does not work, so if serious injuries occur during a duel, the injured must be quickly removed from the sparring area. Although the facilities and conditions are improving, the current biggest issue is who will fill the vacancies in the first and second teams. Belkist, his personality is very wild and fearless, but he is very talented, having even awakened the wildness skill, a rare ability with only a 1% learning rate. Wildness is a passive skill that converts anger and fear into combat power. If paired with status anomaly skills, it could achieve impressive synergistic effects. Looking at Nerissa, she is calm and cool-headed, good at stealth and gathering various information. If trained properly, she could become a formidable rogue. As for the rest of the heroes, they are not even worth mentioning. Meanwhile, Belkist gestures for Loki to come down for a fight. "You really are an arrogant one," then slowly heads towards the sparring area. "May I learn a few moves from my senior?" After all, these guys are afraid of the knife in your hand. Loki is disdainful because, in his eyes, they are nothing more than a bunch of beasts. If you're not capable, you can't even tame a beast. As the two are about to clash, the next second, they collide with each other. Facing Belkist's fierce attack, Loki easily dodges and even kicks Belkist tens of meters away. "It seems you are indeed strong." At the same time, Belkist immediately uses his wildness skill and attacks Loki again. Although there's no need to use the berserk skill now, who knows about later? The scene shifts, and Isol gathers the first team. When Ivalka thinks it's another floor raid, Loki denies it. After all, if it were a raid, the first team would still be missing one person. Isol provides the answer. "This time we're going on an exploration. An exploration exploration. In this world, there are 3 types of dungeons one can enter: main floor dungeons, weekly dungeons, and dungeons instances. Although exploration instances were unlocked after clearing floor 10, they were not permitted for entry until after clearing floor 15. At this moment, Isol informs everyone that she has opened a time rift on the first floor. Can't we use the big door on the second floor? Isol affirms that they cannot. Is exploring the instance necessary? Not necessarily. However, exploration requires a lot of time, at least about 2 days. If converted to waiting room time, that would be even more. So, what mainly happens during exploration? You'll find out soon enough. Meanwhile, the master grants Loki and the others some exploration allowances. Each person will have 3 gold coins. Subsequently, as they proceed, soldiers block Loki in the group's path, demanding a pass. Unexpectedly, Loki tosses them a gold coin, and they are allowed to pass. After all, gold coins are the most needed thing here. Before conquering floor 10, Nelsa was on the verge of collapse, but it seems very calm here. You can move freely now. The group is shocked at this moment. Loki continues, the gold coins should be enough for you to use. Just relax appropriately. Leave the rest to me. Although Ivalka is skeptical about this, Loki just tells her to rest well. After all, we won't have any rest time again until after clearing floor 20. Subsequently, she states her intention to go outside the city to see the sea. Of course, you can, as in 2 days, you will be automatically transported back to the restroom. Following this, everyone starts moving freely. At this moment, Loki notices some irregularities. Why are there so many mercenaries here? When he sees the nearby notice board, he then understands everything. Is it that child? Loki thinks. As it appears, all the unbearable accusations have been imposed on her. Even her royal status has been revoked. Just then, a child interrupts his thoughts. Are you also looking for that witch? Why would she be called a witch? The child answered, because she used forbidden black magic, summoning creatures that should not exist. Loki, wanting to know more about the princess, immediately tossed him a gold coin. This was his payment for telling Loki everything. According to the information he provided, the warrant for the princess was issued a year ago, and it had been just under a week since Loki had parted ways with her. Additionally, Loki recognized the symbol on the warrant as he had seen it on the soldier's armor before. From this, he deduced that the princess must still be alive. Loki was curious about whether the city had been invaded by monsters. The boy explained that about 2 years ago, a massive influx of goblins had stormed into the city. Although humans eventually triumphed, rumors suggested that these monsters were summoned by the princess. After all, monsters don't just appear in groups. Another point of interest was the appearance of the dungeons. A few years ago, historical ruins suddenly appeared across the continent, which we call dungeons. Oddly, ordinary people cannot enter these dungeons, so only specific groups of people can enter. The boy affirmed this. Rumors had it that at the end of the dungeons lay a strange stone. Possessing it granted a special power. At this moment, Loki had his answer. It was the Advent Stone, the source of the 3rd type of power for heroes. He then concluded that there must be such a stone nearby. Although the boy was unclear how Loki knew this. All the mercenaries around here, and yet the information is not even worth a gold coin. So, you should lead the way for me. Just as Loki was signaling the boy to lead the way, the scene shifted, and a procession of wounded passed by them. It seemed the dungeon was right in the city. From the boy's story, it was learned that the dungeon appeared next to the city center's temple after the Nelsa monster invasion had ended. Within moments, the two reached the entrance to the dungeon. It was said to contain many treasures, such as gold coins, gems, and rare equipment. However, the Soldiers Guild held the ownership of the dungeon, so one must have a pass to enter. Afterward, seeing that there was nothing else for him here, the boy said goodbye to Loki and left. Meanwhile, Loki was left deep in thought. From the equipment they carried, it seemed the mercenaries were not eager to conquer the dungeon, and there was almost no activity. After observing for a long time, Loki noted that less than 1 in 10 could enter the dungeon, but if the team leader could enter, then all his team members could too. Loki was sure he could enter. At the same time, what are you still doing here? It turned out the little boy had come back. He said he had someone appraise the gold coin and found it to be worth more than he had imagined. Thus, to show his gratitude, the boy came back to tell Loki an important piece of information. The boy noticed Loki seemed very interested in the princess, having heard she was actually framed by the Soldiers Guild. To this, Loki responded that he was already aware. Although the boy offered many convenient services to Loki, all were declined by him. When Loki asked why the boy is bothering him, because you remind me of someone I once knew. You're also from the East, aren't you? Among the young people I've met, one was very much like you, also with black hair and black eyes. The first time he spoke to Loki, it was for this reason. Just as the boy was recalling that person's name, Loki stopped him, signaling him not to continue. Take me to the jewelry store. The scene shifted, and they arrived at the store. Unexpectedly, Jenna was also there. Is this longbow still good? Loki carefully checked the longbow's attributes and found it to be just a low-level longbow. Thus, he suggested, instead of buying such low-level equipment, it's better to buy something more valuable, like elemental stones. If we bring these back, the master will surely be very pleased, as these are materials needed for upgrading. Among these stones, there is another item worth noting, the regenerative stone. It allows heroes to re-experience already conquered floor dungeons. Although it doesn't provide experience, it does allow for the accumulation of practical experience through completing challenges. After purchasing these stones, Loki and the others turned and left the place. When guide Josh caught up to them, Loki tossed him a gold coin and told him he could leave. The boy stared at the coin in his hand, lost in thought, then told Loki he would use this gold to create more wealth and would definitely repay him in the future. Loki immediately declined. If you have the chance, just help that witch. Then, the two disappeared into the crowd. The scene shifted, and everyone was teleported back to the waiting area. Ivalka was complaining that she couldn't go to the beach outside the city because the passageways were blocked. It seems their range of movement is limited. The exploration dungeon is only unlocked after every 10 floors are cleared. When they have cleared 100 floors, they will be able to explore freely. Just about a week later, many unfamiliar faces had suddenly appeared, and even the second floor had several newcomers. Everyone just take a good rest today. Training starts tomorrow. However, Eren thought about starting training immediately, but was scolded by Loki. You want to wear yourself out? Rest when you need to rest. Don't always contradict me. Loki knows that similar situations had occurred in Niflheim, and most of them did not end well. Not everything can be changed by hard work. If enormous effort yields no results, it means there is a lack of innate talent. It's better to find a path suitable for oneself early, or else die during missions. That's an immutable fact. The scene shifted, and the second team was training fiercely, but Jenna was quite shocked. They usually did not train with real swords. Loki noticed something odd. Roderick, Adis, and Arthur were there, but Daika was missing. The scene shifted, and the news came that the third team had been disbanded on the spot because Belkist and Nerissa had been assigned to the second floor. As Loki and others were training, the two slowly approached them. It seemed time to replenish their ranks. Jenna asked Loki if she should bring the draw bucket, but he indicated there was no rush. Welcome to the second floor. After discovering Daika was absent, Loki learned from Adis that Daika had been demoted to the first floor due to poor performance. Lacking one member, they couldn't carry out missions, hence the decision to increase the training intensity. Although they hoped the master would draw a high-level hero again soon, it seemed unlikely in the near term. They bluntly stated that they were likely here to fill the vacancies in the first and second teams. Nerissa immediately expressed her desire to join the first team, insisting she wouldn't drag everyone down. Do you really understand your own capabilities? Strength is not the only measure of a person. Nerissa responded that besides strength, she possesses many practical skills. Loki interrupted and made it clear that they don't get to choose where they go. Nerissa, why are you so eager to join Team 1? Then, she slowly explained that although she initially didn't believe in the great contributions of Loki and others, after using the regenerative stone, she saw it all. The regenerative stone allows heroes to redo finished missions or view others' clearing records. Typically, it's used to redo tasks, but it seems the player showed her the clearing footage of Loki and others. So how much did you see? Everything. At that moment, she realized how naive her previous thoughts were. Wanting to be in the same team as the strong to survive is natural. That's why she wants to join the first team. What about the second team? Sorry, I didn't think about that. Although the second team is good, who wouldn't choose a stronger team? At this time, Belkist also expressed his desire to join the first team. Normally, the team a hero belongs to is decided by drawing lots, but Nerissa raised an objection to this. Nerissa believed that joining a team shouldn't just be left to chance, and she suggested a different method for selection. Are you suggesting that I make the decision? Adis explained that she didn't want someone who was averse to the second team to join the first team. However, that would leave the second team incomplete. Jenna remarked that even if Loki made a choice, there would surely be dissatisfaction among them. If not for Belkist's bad attitude, Loki might have already chosen him. Since you all want to join the first team, let's settle it with a duel. Demonstrate your abilities through combat. The duel will be held there, and the injuries received won't heal. Fight until one falls, then I'll make a decision. That suits me, as it's been a long time since I last fought. But may I go all out? Loki affirmed this. As the two went to the sparring grounds, Nerissa immediately pulled out a potion from her pocket and poured it over her longsword. Since the duel had no restrictions, this was a paralyzing toxin capable of immobilizing a person instantly, and it was her first time using it on someone. Meanwhile, the system prompted for duel approval, which Loki immediately confirmed. The next second, Belkist launched a fierce attack on Nerissa, who defended with rapid fencing but was easily dodged by Belkist. A fierce battle of offense and defense ensued. At this moment, Arthur noted that Belkist had been hiding his true capabilities. Meanwhile, Loki reminded everyone to watch closely. This is a good learning opportunity. Although the two were equally matched in combat skills, their understanding of fighting differed. Nerissa kept dodging, using the terrain to her advantage, which Loki immediately noticed. Ivalka also shared her views, noting how excellently both performed on their first arrival on the second floor. As Belkist's relentless assault continued, Nerissa pulled out a dagger from her pocket and threw it directly at him. Belkist, unable to dodge in time, had his cheek sliced by the dagger, falling into a poisoned state. Just when Nerissa thought she had the upper hand, Belkist instantly closed the distance, striking her hard in the abdomen and slamming her against the railing. The fight should be over now. I win. You have no objections. The result was clear. The person joining the first team will be Nerissa. What do you mean by this? He was the winner of that duel, but Loki had chosen the losing side's Nelisa as their team member. Even Jenna couldn't help but praise Nerissa. Perhaps only Jenna, Roderick, and Adis could see what happened during their duel. In the middle of the fight, Nerissa deliberately cornered herself to make Belkist lower his guard. The dual sword technique she used before was merely a diversion, all to make that one strike count. Although Belkist ultimately won the duel, most people failed to notice the tactical maneuvers Nerissa employed in battle. At this moment, Belkist was very dissatisfied with the outcome. I can repeat it as many times as necessary. Nerissa will join the first team. What do you mean by that? Do you know the composition of the first team? Swordsmen, archers, spearmen, and mages were all pure combat heroes. So, to handle various contingencies, we need someone like Nerissa. You are indeed very talented, but our team doesn't need you. That's all. Do you want to challenge me? If you can last for a minute, then I will let you join the first team. At this moment, Belkist suddenly had an idea. What about the other members of the team? He then turned his gaze towards Eren, but Loki immediately refused him. This isn't about being strong, it's about the formation. Has he really fulfilled his duties as a spearman? He had watched everyone's combat replays and still had doubts. Belkist seemed to notice someone who didn't quite fit in. Does Loki really need a spearman to the extent of ignoring his own weaknesses? At that moment, Jenna intervened, saying that Eren had been trying very hard. You have exceptional talent yourself, so you can't understand his feelings. At the same time, Loki immediately stopped their discussion and then expressed his view. As Belkist said, a spearman isn't essential to the team. We could change the formation if a swordsman joins, but only if the swordsman is stronger than the spearman. Do you think you can beat Eren? Of course, I am fully confident. If I lose the duel, I will join the second team without hesitation. What will you decide, Eren? You can refuse to fight. Loki knew that Eren had been pushing himself harder than usual recently, and if it continued, he would eventually die from it. However, from an efficiency standpoint, Eren was still useful, as the team had been working together for a long time, and even with significant skill gaps, he could still coordinate with the team. At the same time, Eren immediately accepted his challenge. If you fail, you won't be able to return to the first team. The winner will join the first team. The scene shifted, and now the two stood in the training arena. With Loki's command, they immediately began an intense battle. Although Jenna was puzzled by Eren's decision, Loki just told her that it was Eren's own choice. But what if he loses? After all, Belkist is so strong. As long as he does as he's trained, he has a chance to win. Both parties' weapons were at level 4. Although Belkist had a variety of skills, Eren had one clear advantage: combat experience. Belkist, being new, had not experienced as many battles as Eren nor fought against powerful bosses. Moreover, he lacked experience fighting against spearmen. During their duel, Eren's marksmanship far exceeded Belkist's expectations. At this moment, facing Eren's fierce attack, Belkist gradually fell into a disadvantage. A spearman's movements are beyond reason. The final candidate to join the first team is about to be announced. Faced with Eren's attack, even Belkist felt somewhat overwhelmed. The long spear has always been an essential weapon for hunting, and throughout history, it has become longer. However, it has proven that the spear is not very effective in single duels. The spear and sword differ by a meter, but an inch longer is an inch more dangerous. If approached by close-range weapons, there is no counterattack. Compared to daggers or bows, the spear has no advantages, but people always surpass themselves, so this logic does not apply here. At the same time, Eren continually thrusts at Belkist. With a sweeping blow, Belkist leaps into the air. Although Belkist was very talented before he came here, the principles here are different from reality once he became a hero. Eren and Loki have sparred hundreds of times. He can skillfully handle various monsters. At this time, however, Jenna noticed something amiss. Although Eren was fighting well, it didn't seem like him. What are you talking about? If this continues, won't Eren win? But Jenna denied this because she noticed that the number of times Belkist was injured was noticeably decreasing. Do you see it too? Eren has excellent combat skills, but his weakness is also very apparent. His tactics are easily deciphered, and Belkist has a very sharp eye. From the battle between Belkist and Nerissa, he has excellent observational skills, and he may soon awaken the mind's eye skill. At the same time, Belkist realized that Eren was not using his full strength, which greatly displeased him. After all, he challenged Eren with the determination to die. Why don't you give it your all? Loki also noticed Eren's weakness. Eren, when did you start caring about your opponent's life? Are you so powerful that you can afford to show mercy? Show your full strength. Don't disappoint me. Upon hearing this, Eren immediately made up his mind. Even if I kill you, you must have no complaints. Of course, I couldn't ask for more. As the two poised for battle, the next second, they both launched fierce attacks. Facing Eren's thrust, Belkist parried with his sword. However, in the moment he parried, Eren had already teleported in front of him, followed by a direct thrust, then launched a furious assault, all dodged by Belkist. The next second, a powerful blow from Eren came, which Belkist dodged by sidestepping. The spear pierced the iron net. At this moment, everyone looked on with bated breath. As a drop of blood fell, the intense fight came to an abrupt end, and the victor was Belkist. Even Arthur found this unbelievable, but facts spoke louder than words. Everyone was very puzzled, as just one hit caused Eren to lose the entire duel. Belkist was very foresight. As the fight dragged on, he gradually mastered Eren's attack patterns, even finding opportunities to strike Eren. Although he had a good chance to attack earlier, he chose to continue waiting for the perfect opportunity. He knew that just one strike would win the battle, so he chose to endure Eren's attacks silently until he found an opportunity for a decisive blow. He could calmly analyze his chances of winning, possessing exceptional observational skills. This guy is very patient. It would have been more interesting if you had gone all out from the start. I acknowledge what you said. Although Narissa was dissatisfied with the outcome, believing that Eren was not ready, Loki stated that a promise is a promise. The person to join the first team is Belkist. Eren is out. Extreme effort is really insignificant in the face of talent. No matter how hard Eren tried, he was always unable to keep up with everyone. After Eren was expelled from the first team, Loki expressed his incomprehension. Eren, your actions, which we cannot understand, have brought failure, and you are solely responsible for this situation. However, Arthur believes that Eren simply didn't want to harm his teammates. Stop joking. We are not here to make friends, but to survive and defeat enemies. Those who don't understand this will ultimately meet a bad end. Remember that. It's getting late. Everyone should go back and rest. Then, he entrusted two important matters to them. Don't think that joining the first team means you can relax. In fact, the tasks of the first team are the most dangerous. Of course, that's exactly why I came. I want to become stronger. Subsequently, everyone headed towards the rest area. Eren, even sitting there won't change anything. Why didn't you give it your all in the initial duel? You had the advantage at the beginning, but why did you give Belkis time to adapt? Because I don't want to hurt my teammates. When did you start thinking about these things? I don't remember training you to be so weak. He just changed his mind. He knows he has no talent, even if he could easily win this duel now. What about later? When Belkis becomes stronger, how will he face him? He can't kill a talented individual right here. After their duel, Eren realized that extreme effort really is insignificant in the face of talent. He's not as innately gifted as Loki and Jenna. No matter how hard he tries, he always feels like he's running in place. It seems he has lost confidence in himself. There's a position for an instructor on the first floor, responsible for training newcomers. I think you and Daika are both well suited for this job. You just need to stay in a safe place and train newcomers. Although this position is very competitive, I will highly recommend you two to the master. At that moment, Eren was torn. What are you hesitating about? Do you want to become as strong as Belkist? Don't you want to return to your family? After some internal struggle, Eren said he would become an instructor. If you're not willing, why force yourself? I once knew a guy just like you. His talent was even worse than yours. I had countless thoughts of giving up on him. Do you want to become strong? Suddenly, Eren knelt down and then started sobbing uncontrollably. I want to become stronger. I don't want to be weak anymore. But do I really have a way to become stronger? Loki affirmed. When that door opens, I will take you to Niflheim, and that will be a good place. The scene shifts, and now Loki is emphasizing some important matters to everyone. Because our battles are conducted amidst flames, you must master fire resistance, and the method to use is to burn your own arms. Although it sounds ridiculous, it is very effective. So, the two agreed to Loki's suggestion. Afterwards, Loki began assigning tasks. Jenna will fill Eren's vacancy, so she needs to take up the bow and fight. Belkist and I are both close combat heroes, so we need to fight within the support range of the rear. If you choose to fight alone, you will not help the team. As for Narissa, she has various skills to gather intelligence, fight, and support teammates. Therefore, Loki arranges her in the middle position. Depending on the situation, she needs to fight, support teammates, or assassinate enemies, and is responsible for gathering intelligence. Although Narissa agreed nonchalantly, Loki was worried because if she cannot accept her role, conflict will inevitably occur. What should I do then? You just need to handle running away. After adjusting the first team, next was the second team. Since the master has not performed a gacha draw, the second team still lacks suitable candidates. If no one is found, go to the first floor to look. If you observe carefully, you will surely find the right person. Additionally, starting today, Daika will take on the role of an instructor, needing to focus on teaching those with potential. Currently, there are more than 20 people training in the hall, and at least one talented individual should emerge. However, even if a suitable candidate is found, do not make it too obvious, as this may provoke discrimination from others. After all, in this environment, those high and mighty types will appear. After finalizing the personnel of the first team, they return to the dueling arena. To better integrate with the team, they must understand each other's strengths and weaknesses through dueling. This duel has no rules, and even real weapons can be used. Before the duel started, Loki reminded Belkis that it's best to face Narissa together, otherwise he would suffer a miserable defeat. Or do you want to challenge me alone? Of course, that's what I think. The next second, Loki instantly entered a berserk state. Previously, it was said that several new heroes from the first floor challenged Belkis, but were all defeated during the duel. Clearly, they were no match for him. Although they challenged potential team candidates everywhere, it did not cause much trouble. Although no one can currently defeat the heroes of the second floor, Loki knew that it was necessary to make these people understand the saying, there are always bigger fish. With a fierce strike, Loki's weapon instantly sent Belkis flying. Don't think that just because you've defeated a few heroes from the first floor you're something special. As expected, Loki was even stronger than he imagined. Then, Belkis signaled that he wanted to challenge Loki together with Narissa. Subsequently, Narissa coded her her sword with poison. Now, Loki had to face two people, and even for him, this battle would not be easy. Why not try to know? After a moment's fight, the two ultimately lost because they couldn't coordinate well together. Loki concluded that they couldn't even defeat Jenna. He signaled Jenna to start training them. Although Jenna was not very confident in her own strength, Loki assured her not to worry because she was stronger than those two. They must fight together until they can defeat Jenna. However, Belkist believed he wouldn't lose to a woman, so he immediately declared he could defeat Jenna alone. If that's the case, then show all your strength. If you can defeat Jenna, I will accept your challenge unconditionally. With Loki's command, Jenna quickly shot arrows at Belkist. As he swung his sword to block, the next second, a volley of arrows came straight at him. He didn't have time to think, frantically waving his long sword to block, but still one arrow nearly took his life. I told you, Jenna is stronger than you. It seems I really was a frog in a well. Loki reiterated, encouraging them to defeat Jenna together with Nerissa. We will encounter many strong enemies in our mission, so we must learn to work as a team. However, Nerissa still wanted to try alone. You're really stubborn. In no time, Nerissa was pinned against the wall, just as I expected. You couldn't even last a minute. Then, the two decided to defeat Jenna together. The next second, they suddenly attacked her, but their performance was very poor. Nerissa was busy defending against the arrows and was knocked down by Jenna finding a gap. Even Belkist performed very poorly, unable to fully block the arrows. What are you doing? You're even worse than when you fight alone, Belkist exclaimed angrily. At the same time, the two began to blame each other. Loki knew that Belkist's pride was severely wounded. Jenna grew up in the forest and is skilled at taming wild beasts. When dealing with smart wild animals, one needs to learn quickly. No matter how fierce, to a trained hunter, a beast is merely prey. As a beast, you should learn to hunt in packs. As Jenna began to train with them, in no time, the two were quickly defeated again. If you're seriously injured, don't force it. Just step out of the training ground, and your body will recover quickly. At this moment, Ivalka slowly appeared before them. What are you doing here? You should be training your telekinesis right now. If you don't go back to training, I'll tell Crow. At the same time, Belkist requested another duel, but Loki stopped him. Let's call it a day. You've already taken up too much of Jenna's time, preventing her from doing her own training. If you two can't defeat Jenna by working together tomorrow, I'll reselect the members of the first team. And tomorrow, you only have one chance to challenge. Don't disappoint me. Hearing this, even Jenna was incredulous. Have you ever seen me lie? Just as Jenna was about to explain, Loki immediately stopped her. While their talent is outstanding, it's useless if they don't know how to cooperate. They can't trust their teammates. If they can change this, the outcome will be different. The scene shifts, and everyone is waiting for the two to arrive. Meanwhile, the two slowly approached. Are you fully prepared? Of course. The rules are the same as yesterday. You can use real weapons, but today you only have one chance. Although they are not used to cooperating, they have no other choice at the moment. As soon as Jenna gives the command, the fight erupts instantly. Jenna quickly shoots several arrows at them, but Nerissa doesn't react. The next second, Belkist appears just in time to block the arrows. Meanwhile, Nerissa takes the opportunity to throw a knife, and Jenna rolls to dodge and counterattacks. Belkist just blocked the incoming arrows, shocking Jenna, because in that moment, he suddenly awakened a projectile resistance skill. He instantly discerns the trajectory of all the arrows. Together with Nerissa, they launch a fierce attack on Jenna. Jenna is forced to counterattack, but facing the incoming arrows, they calmly knock them away. Then, in a blink, they've already reached Jenna. Seeing that she is about to be flanked, Jenna chooses to leap into the air, but the next second, a knife flies straight at her. Jenna quickly shifts her center of gravity to fall, trying to dodge. At the same time, Belkist activates his bloodthirst state. While Jenna is distracted, Belkist swings his sword at her. To dodge his attack, Jenna has no choice but to retreat. But just then, a figure flashes from behind her. The next second, a knife is pressed against Jenna's throat. When the two new stars teamed up, even Jenna, a two-star hero, could not defeat them. Is that the end then? It seems it wasn't as hard as we thought. Of course, it's just that simple. You guys took a whole day to adapt. Nerissa can hide her presence, which ultimately leads them to victory. Belkist deliberately uses the bloodthirst skill, knowing that when one's presence is too dominant, the other's presence is often overlooked. The power of the team is always greater than that of the individual. As long as they participate in our missions, they'll understand this. However, Belkist is curious if they can now defeat Loki. But clearly, Loki in his berserk state is slightly superior. The two even came close to a death-like state. Regardless, there's still some time before the next mission, as the master hasn't immediately tasked them, probably to let the two adjust to the new team. At this point, a complete team has officially been formed. Here it comes. The first team's debut battle is finally here. After finalizing the first team's lineup, Loki announces to everyone that Jenna will join the next training session, as she will form a small team with the two. Of course, this doesn't mean they will be a permanent pairing, as they are now in the same team. To handle various special situations, they must learn to work together. Belkist thinks that the first team primarily focuses on individual fighting, as Loki's performance is always the most prominent in crucial battles, and the others are not so conspicuous. Alone, I cannot achieve anything. No matter how strong an individual's abilities are, the team is key. Without the team's support, missions will eventually fail. Of course, if if there emerges a warrior who can fight hundreds alone, that would be a different story. But even Loki cannot reach such heights. What they can do is adapt to the team's training until they get used to the whole team, then resume individual training. The scene shifts, and now the two are already adapting to 2-on-2 training. Whenever a team wins, they adjust the team pairing. Although it is always Loki's team that wins, they gradually get used to the cooperation. Soon after, Ivalka joins the training. Jenna and Ivalka improve their weaknesses through training and both learn a lot under Loki's guidance. Just then, news came from ahead. Team 1 would gather on the first floor plaza. It seems that the raid was finally about to begin. The scene shifted, and facing the crowded plaza, Loki seemed puzzled. These people were known as the third generation. Since the classification, a strange rumor had emerged. Members of Team 1 and Team 2 were called the first generation, while Belkist and Nerissa, who had watched the raid recordings, were known as the second generation, and the rest were called the third generation. At this moment, someone voiced their dissatisfaction but was immediately intimidated by a glance from Belkist. At the same time, an old man, claiming to be severely ill, pleaded with Loki to let him live on the second floor, but Loki immediately refused. After all, the hall itself was supposed to cure everything. Isel signaled to the crowd, "Do not obstruct Team 1, as they are about to raid the 16th floor. Once inside the floor, everyone must follow my command." Everyone affirmed this. Accompanied by a blue light, the next second, they were transported to the 16th floor. Investigating an unfamiliar location, was it an exploration mission? Even Belkist was encountering such a task for the first time. However, Jenna had already experienced similar situations on the 6th floor, but Loki still signaled everyone not to take it lightly. The location of this mission was a castle. Is it a mansion? Clearly, Nerissa found this scene somewhat familiar, but she was not certain and needed further investigation to confirm. Thus, Loki began giving instructions. "These doors cannot be opened. Nelissa, you first use your invisibility skill to scout the area. If you find anything unusual, report back immediately. As for us, we just need to move forward in formation." After some exploration, they found that all the doors were locked and the building's design seemed extremely illogical, as if there was no end. At the same time, 3 paths appeared before them. This is a maze, as these passages are twisted like a labyrinth. For safety, they decided to wait for Nerissa to return before making a decision. Even Loki thought they were up against a troublesome mission. However, Belkist remarked that it was utterly boring, as he had expected to encounter some strong enemies. But Loki reminded them not to be careless. Perhaps those enemies just hadn't appeared yet. He was sure that those enemies were definitely nearby. Not long after, Nerissa returned with information. She reported that walking down the middle corridor, the branches seemed to lead to the same place, and the structure was not as complicated as imagined. Although she hadn't found any enemies or traps, there was something odd that she suggested Loki should check out personally.